Many of my clients, from law firm partners to business owners, often ask me, how do you approach difficult conversations with customers? You know we all hate to do it, but with inflation costs and gas prices and labor running high, you just have to raise your fees. The question is, how do you raise this with your customer when you know they're facing similar challenges? Or maybe it's a slightly different context. Maybe the consulting project you've been working on has been really great, but your findings suggest that if the client doesn't take drastic action now, there's going to be dire consequences. How do you discuss this with a client without upsetting them or making them super defensive? If conversations like these feel even remotely similar, then stick around because this video is for you. If you stay to the end, you're going to learn 4 key tips for how to approach a difficult conversation with your customers. So let's get started. Tip number 1, preparation. Make sure you spend a lot of time thinking about what does the world look like from their perspective. Too often, it's the case that because we're stressed by the thought of this difficult conversation, we don't think it through, and then we avoid having the conversation until the 11th hour, the moment that it can't be avoided. And then we blurt something out, and that could really hurt the relationship. Sometimes it could throw the person off. And so in advance of that moment coming, I want to think about, how do I frame this conversation? What would make it hard for them to hear my message? And what is a really good way that I can actually approach it? So that preparation time, even though it's tempting to not do it, right? Tempting to just kind of blurt it out, is really important. Second, I want to choose an appropriate time, place, and method to have this conversation. I've seen all sorts of classic mistakes happen, right? A really big common classic mistake is, since it's bad news, it's delivered over email. Another thing I've seen is we know that we have to share something terrible and we want to get it off our plate, so we do it like the Friday afternoon before Memorial Day weekend, right? We're like, yeah, at least I can sleep. The problem is you've just completely ruined your client's weekend. It's probably never going to be a good time for a difficult conversation, but when can I find a time when they will at least be more ready to hear and to process this conversation? Similarly, although it's tempting to maybe have a difficult conversation over email or in a text or embedding it in some kind of report, it makes a lot more sense, if possible, to do this in person, or if I can't do it in person, to do it by phone or over Zoom. First, right, it shows respect for the client. Secondly, it gives you a chance, particularly if it's in person or over Zoom, to at least see how they're reacting. Are they getting defensive? Are they looking angry? Do they look sad? Do they look confused? Right? So I can modify what it is I'm saying. And third, right, it actually does allow for a conversation. Third, I think this one is really key, and it's be direct. One of the common mistakes people make when they have to have a difficult conversation with their client is they back in, or they're somehow passive aggressive. Like, boy, inflation's been rough. How's it going for you? Right? That's their kind of way to ultimately say, I need to raise your fees. I'm going to give you an example of me being on the receiving end of a difficult conversation where the person's indirectness ended up leading to a huge amount of frustration on my part and probably on their part. So this was a situation where I was doing some work on behalf of a client for one of their clients. And this work was being done over Zoom. And on Zoom, I usually list my name, Bob Bordone, and then I put in parentheses, he, him, his, which are my preferred gender pronouns. And I do this for a number of reasons, but the most important reason why I do it is to signal to people on the Zoom that they can feel comfortable indicating whatever their preferred gender identity might be. And we're about ready to go live with this client, and suddenly the client coordinator says to me, oh, I was thinking it might be helpful for people to know you're the presenter. So maybe for your name, you could put presenter. And I thought like, okay, it'll probably be pretty clear I'm the presenter once I start presenting. But I didn't say anything. I was like, yeah, happy to do that. So I put Bob Bordone, parens, presenter, parens, he, him, his. And they said, oh, what do you think of that he, him, his? I said, yeah, I think it's fine. It's a way of, signaling to people that this can be a comfortable place to identify however they prefer to identify. Oh, do you think it'll be distracting? I don't think so. I'm not too worried about it. Oh, we haven't had that conversation yet. You mean the conversation about what I'd like to be called? This is not a conversation I imagined you would have. No, I didn't say that. But that's what I thought. Instead, I just said to them, it sounds like you prefer for me to take he, him, his off of my name. Am I right about that? And they said, well, if you wouldn't mind. And I thought, they may have some really good reasons around this, and it might be a really good and fruitful conversation to have. But boy, is this a weird way to have it. It's backing in this weird way. It's not being direct. I'm the one who's raising the topic. And then it's poorly timed at a moment where we really can't have a conversation. Now, what I decided to do, because some of you might be wondering, is I said, why don't I take it off and then we could have a further conversation about this later, which is exactly what we did. The point here, though, is that the danger in backing in, the danger in leaving breadcrumbs and hoping that they'll take it up, is that they might not, and it could often lead to some frustration. Last important point is if you're going to have a difficult conversation, you have to remember it is a conversation. So make some space for their perspective. That means giving them a chance to react, listening to them, and offering appreciation for their perspective. It might also mean, if their perspective is different from yours, finding a way to problem solve, not persuade them that your perspective is right, but to problem solve. So here's one thing to avoid, especially in a context where you're working with a customer. Sometimes, because we want to please the customer, and this has already been a difficult conversation, we can tend to overpromise. So we might say, oh, I can solve for that. Or yes, if you agree to this new price, I'll also add A, B, C, D, and E. And we're thinking we don't even want to give A, B, C, D, or E. So I want to go into this conversation knowing what I'm prepared to do and what I can do, and not being over-inclined to overpromise and then create a situation where ultimately either they're going to be disappointed or we're going to feel that we gave too much away and not feel good about how it turned out. So having difficult conversations with customers is absolutely part of all life. Avoiding it will usually get us into trouble. But there are some things we can do to make it easier. First, prepare. Spend some time thinking about what does the world look like from their perspective, and how can we frame the issue in a way that invites them into a productive conversation. Second, choose a good time, a good place, and a good way to have the conversation, one that is direct and tailored to the subject matter. Third, don't back in. Raise the issues you need to discuss clearly, cogently, and directly. Lastly, remember, it is a conversation. Make space for their perspective. So, if you want to continue learning about how to be skillful in difficult conversations with others, watch this next video, which is what are good communication skills in a relationship. And before you leave, I'd love to hear your reactions to this video and would be grateful if you'd subscribe to my channel, hit like, and ring the bell. Okay, you want to know what some good communication skills are. Keep on watching.